Hello, dear viewers. I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the world. Today, I am starting something new. I am making a video about an election that is in process. I've not done. Today, I want to talk about the French elections between Macron and Le Pen, and I want to compare their policies from a nationalistic perspective. Let me begin. Emmanuel Macron versus Marine Le Pen, a comparison of their policies from a French nationalistic perspective. I'll just briefly talk about French nationalism. French nationalism is basically cultural cultural nationalism of France, based on their history and their culture. It Modern French nationalism begins from the French Revolution onwards. Uh, it was there before with all the wars with England, but uh, really most French uh, nationalists today are from the traditions of the French Revolution. They uh, sup- believe that because their values that inspired the French Revolution were so high-minded, liberté, égalité, fraternité, and the rest, they believed that France had a right to impose these views on other nations. That is what Napoleon believed, and he basically spread French nationalism throughout the country and to the rest of Europe. Then it continued into the World Wars. It was greatly affected by World War II because of the defeat, which really hurt France's nationalist pride. And since World War II, French nationalism has been kind of sidelined because of the new political movements, such as postmodernism and neoliberalism, neoconservatism. And for a while, French nationalism was seen as something bad, something not proper in French society and political society at least. But now that's changed because Marine Le Pen is out and out French nationalist, but she's not a conqueror like Napoleon. She simply wants to preserve France's cultural and uh, linguistic identity. And yes, I think she wants to preserve their ethnic identity as well. The French are a ethnicity of their own within Europe. So I think she qualifies as an ethno-nationalist, but she hasn't specifically said that. I'm just interpreting that from her policy positions. So yeah, let's begin. First, we'll talk about the first round of results that happened. I have spoken about the French election procedure in a previous video, which I will link to here. I will not be going over that today for lack of time. So please watch that first before you watch this in order to understand this video. So the first round results, it was first held on 10th April. Total votes were 35 million. Macron got 9 million votes and 27.8%. Le Pen got 8 million votes and 23.1%. Mélenchon got 7 million and 22%. Zemmour got 2 million and 7.1%. And yeah, everyone else got less than 5%, so I wasn't very interested to talk about them. So yeah. So Macron and Le Pen progressed to the next and final round. Zemmour endorsed Le Pen, and all the other candidates endorsed Macron except for Mélenchon. Mélenchon told his voters not to vote for Le Pen, but did not tell them to vote for Macron. Simply said, don't vote for the far right candidate who he describes as the far right candidate. That's all. So just because Mélenchon voters will not be voting for Le Pen, it does not mean that they will vote for Macron. It is possible that they will either abstain or give a blank vote. Now, the first policy I want to talk about and compare them is national security. First, Macron. On counterterrorism, he said he will promulgate a bill for the orientation and programming bill introduced by the Ministry of the Interior, which will provide for the creation of a new specialized training offer in intelligence offered to his partners by the General Directorate of Internal Security, which will include exchanges with the National Coordination of Intelligence and the fight against terrorism. So, a bill that is already in the Ministry of the Interior, which is already there, he will promulgate it in a second term. And this offers a new specialized training offer in intelligence, and it's offered to the Ministry of Interior's partners by the General Director of Internal Security, and will include exchanges with the National Coordination of Intelligence and this other organization. So basically, he's going to uh, i- in focus on improving the training given to the intelligence community, and that this will be uh, sorry, and that this will be done throughout the intelligence community, not just in one department, but in all of them. So he's really focusing on intelligence as a counterterrorism tool. Second, as for their budget of the police and the gendarmerie are similar to the police in that they provide uh, law and order services, but they're different because the police uh, enforce law and order in the urban areas, and the gendarmerie enforce it in rural or semi-rural areas. Their gendarmerie translates as constables. Now, this same bill that Macron will promulgate will also add 15 billion euros to the budget of the Ministry of the Interior over 5 years. So that's billion euros per year, approximately. Now, as for radicalization, this refers to radicalization of French Muslims and immigrants who are Muslims but not French. Uh, they say that uh, he will continue the closure of radical Islamic associations and mosques, clandestine schools, the expulsion of radicalized preachers, and control of foreign funding. I think I agree with this. There are several mosques and Islamic associations in France that are radical, that are uh, preaching uh, to people to go against the French country, to attack people, and they are against freedom of speech. So if somebody criticizes Islam in France, these radicals motivate people to go and attack those people who did criticize Islam, even though that is protected under French law and freedom of speech as a principle. So I'm glad he's closing these. And I think that on its own, this is an okay policy, national security policy. But my only problem is that in the counter-terrorism part, he just focuses on training intelligence officers and integrating the intelligence uh, departments, but he doesn't talk about what he's going to do directly for Islamist terrorism. Yes, he says radicalization. He'll close organizations that are radicalizing French Muslims, but he hasn't made a connection between this and counterterrorism, which is a bit worrisome. It's just, I think, a lack in policy clarity. And as far as the budget, well, this to a foreigner's view, this looks adequate. Unfortunately, this is all we know about his plans for the police and the gendarmerie. We don't know if he's going to increase the police number or their improve their equipment or stuff. We just don't know. So I can't really say that this is enough. Le Pen, counterterrorism. She will pass a bill to prohibit the practice, demonstration, and public dissemination of Islamist ideology. It will remove French nationality from individuals who demonstrate or disseminate this ideology. The apparatus of general intelligence will be supplemented by creating a territorial network under direction of a national anti-terrorist prosecutor. This is good, I think. It's fo- it focuses on intelligence, but also uh, comments on the nature of the terrorist threat, which is Islamist, and talks about prohibiting the ideology. Goes to show that she understands the whole situation. And budget of the police and gendarmerie, the budget will be increased by 1.5 billion euros per year. 7,000 police and gendarmerie posts and 3,000 administrative staff will be uh, put. This project tends to oblige municipalities with more than 10,000 inhabitants to have a municipal police. This is good. This will make sure that there is enough police presence in France for all its citizens. And while this isn't as much of an increase in the budget as Macron is suggesting, the fact that she is talking also about uh, increasing the personnel of police, including the administrative staff, shows that she understands that it's as for the police and the constables, the situation is not just about money, but also about people. So she's uh, focused on both aspects. Radicalization. She proposed a law to combat Islamist ideologies, which would make it possible to prohibit the manifestation or dissemination of them on the internet and that educational establishment. She also wants to recreate a general intelligence department to prevent terrorist attacks. I agree with this, and I think that this, if she does this and continues the closure of radical Islamic associations that Macron has done, then I think she can really just finish off the threat of Islamic terror in France. I really hope that happens. Foreign policy. Macron, NATO, he says he does not want to change France's relationship to it. Uh, and yeah, he's really not tried to do much with NATO, but he has uh, created a leadership role for him in NATO and France in particular. And as for the Ukraine Russia war, Macron supports sanctions on Russia and will continue to sanction Russia. He has supplied weapons to Ukraine. So far, he has not sent French troops. Whether in the future he will still not send French troops is unknown. He has not said one way or another. Europe. He wants to strengthen the European Union by adopting a common doctrine and strengthening European armies. Common doctrine is something I'm not sure if that's a legal doctrine or a foreign policy doctrine, but it does show that he wants to make France's policies more in line with the European Union, and he wants to strengthen European armies. He wants France to have a very dominant foreign policy, wants to be a leader in NATO, wants to be a leader in Europe, and wants to be shown to be uh, strong on Russia. Le Pen is a little different. She says that she wants to withdraw France from the integrated military command of NATO, and she criticizes it for encircling Russia. Now, this point, integrated military command of NATO, refers to NATO's uh, basically all the countries in NATO, of course, have their own militaries, but NATO itself as an organization has from troops of all the countries within it, it has its own military command, integrated military command, which it directs and operates. France, Le Pen will withdraw France from this because she thinks that this will get France involved in NATO's military adventures. And she criticizes it for encircling Russia, says that by uh, accepting countries that border Russia into NATO, it has threatened Russia, and that's why Russia has reacted by attacking Ukraine. In the Ukraine-Russia war, she was uh, she says she said very clearly that she is opposed to sending French troops to Ukraine. She supports a diplomatic solution to the conflict, has criticized economic sanctions on Russia because they will hurt France's economy, has rejected Ukraine's inclusion into NATO. Now, this means that she uh, wants a diplomatic solution. She doesn't want an economic war or a military conflict. She wants a diplomatic solution. She believes that a solution can be found. She said that she would work through the UN to find a diplomatic solution. Europe. She says she will stay in the EU but wants to prevent the application of any European law that is contrary to the French Constitution. So this is self-explanatory, but it's not obvious because actually in international law, there is this concept of uh, where countries either get international law and their own domestic law on the same level, or they put their domestic law superior to their international law. So, yeah, she's obviously putting their own national law superior to European law. And so basically, the similarities are that both of them want to stay in NATO and both of them want to stay in Europe, and both of them want this war between Ukraine and Russia to end. However, the similarities end there because what Le Pen is suggesting is France to have a bit of a lesser role in NATO and the EU, and to have a foreign policy based on its own national interests rather than the interests of NATO and Europe, which is different than what Macron has said. Immigration. Macron. He says he will allow asylum seekers to apply in France itself, but will deport them if rejected. He wants to keep birthright citizenship for children born to foreign parents and the automatic acquisition of nationality through marriage. If foreigners come to France, they will be, and if they have children, their children are automatically French citizens. Uh, and if a foreigner immigrant marries a French citizen, then automatically they gain French nationality. This is something he wants to keep. Le Pen. She wants asylum seekers to apply in their own countries at French consulates or embassies so that they don't need to be deported if rejected. And she wants to remove birthright citizenship for children born to foreign parents and the automatic acquisition of nationality through marriage. So, what can we make of this? First, they both support asylum seekers but are simply a bit more restrictive on how they want the process to be. Macron will allow asylum seekers to apply in France, but also obviously in their own countries of origin. But if they are rejected, they will be deported. Le Pen says that uh, she does not want asylum seekers applying in France itself. She wants them applying within their own countries so that if they are rejected, there's no need for deportation. But, and the big difference is that she wants to remove birthright citizenship for children and uh, automatic acquisition of nationality through marriage. This shows that she understands that some illegal immigrants and some legal immigrants are coming to France and getting citizenship at a faster rate than France can handle, and by exploiting these provisions. So yeah, um, that's basically it. So yeah, these are the differences and similarities between Macron and Le Pen. Uh, I think both of them are pretty decent candidates, and I think that France will do well, irrespective of whoever wins. But I do think that Le Pen will be better because she's simply more rooted in France, his culture and tradition. And Macron is simply an elitist. He was a banker before he entered politics, a Rothschild banker. For all you conspiracy theorists out there, you know. I can imagine what you're thinking right now. Yeah, I'm thinking the same. So, uh, yeah, this is basically nationalism versus globalism uh, being fought for in France. One reason I'm not worried too much about Macron getting elected is because although he is a globalist, he is also still protecting France. He's not completely sold it out. He's not like Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden. But still, Le Pen is simply better. Her terrorism policies are better. Her foreign policies are more uh, realistic and centered on France's domestic concerns. And she's not trying to appeal to the foreign elites in NATO and the EU. And yeah, their immigration policies are similar, but still, Le Pen is just better. So yeah, that's what I want to say. If you like this video and want to see want to see my other videos about uh, nationalism in foreign countries outside of South Asia, which this kind of covers, click here. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.